Hi, this is Trev and welcome to my blog. This is a bit of a viewer request this time round. I don't know if you've seen it, but I was doing a paint polishing tutorial on how I polish paint on my Bedford. I was polishing it up and a viewer requested, Trev, is it possible to remove marks from a windscreen, i.e. wiper marks from a windscreen, using the paint polishing products? And I thought, do you know what? I don't actually know. And also, do you know what? I've got tons of windscreen wiper marks in my Bedford windscreen. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity for me to do a tutorial on this. I know it's not my usual thing, but of course somebody's going to take something from this, so I thought it'd be a useful little upload. When I say windscreen, of course, if you're in America, I mean windshield, just to try and get over the terminology. So I say aluminium and you say aluminum. This is the original windscreen from my Bedford van. I have since picked another one up, but the new one's even more scratched than this one under close observation. So the driver's side is particularly bad. We've got these wiper scuff marks, score marks, going all the way across, really bad. Definitely would impair vision. I've also got them going on the passenger side as well. I can appreciate the camera probably isn't picking them up very well. I've also got this funny sort of smear mark here. It's definitely in the surface of the glass because I've tried to clean it with glass cleaner and thinners and nothing will remove it, and there definitely does seem to be something there, so that's something else I need to try and remove. I've also got some what I would call ring scratches, which are from, you know, people's sort of diamond rings or whatever, or, you know, harsh scrapers that they've used, metal scrapers at some stage maybe. So I'm going to do the passenger side first. We've got this score line coming all the way down for about 1.5 inches or so, say from the end of the windscreen, and that just travels all the way up until we get to that funny kind of etched, sort of smeary kind of look to something. I've also got a faint line here as well, so I've got two significant lines. Going to see if I can reduce the visibility of those lines just by using the car polish first. Just going to use some standard 3M fast cut and green top stuff. So let's put it on, as I would if I was just polishing something up. Well, the short answer is yes, it does work. It's certainly got rid of what the rubber left behind, because the rubber's kind of etched something into it and it just ends where I stopped polishing. Got rid of that straight away. It's also got rid of that funny kind of smear that was there. The thing that it hasn't got rid of is the deep part of the scratch, so where the wiper blade is scored, where it's just kind of made it look a little bit dull. Then it kind of polished that up quite well, but there is a slightly deeper score within the scratch. So the scratch sort of made up of two different types of scratches. One's like a scuff and one's like a scratch. It certainly got rid of the scuff, but the scratch is still there. Probably been polishing for about a good 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change to some proper glass polishing equipment. This is cerium oxide glass polish. Mix it to about 1:1 to 2:1 mixing ratio by volume. When I say 2:1, I mean 2 parts powder to 1 part water up to. Tend to find that gives you a fairly good consistency. It's not very good for you, this stuff, so always best to wear a respirator when you're mixing it up. Best to mix it with slightly warm water rather than cold water. You can either add the water to the powder or the powder to the water. Probably powder to the water would work better, because then you could just keep adding it until you get it to this sort of consistency that you feel is quite good. So when it's mixed up, it turns out a little bit like this. So this is what it looks like mixed up. It mixes in incredibly easily, no big stress at all with that. It just dissolves straight in, and it looks a little bit like emulsion paint. What I do find is that it doesn't exactly separate, as in it's curdling, but what it does is the powder's obviously quite heavy and it drops out of the water, so what you tend to get is the powder will just lie on the bottom of the cup after a while, and the water will lie on the top. And I'm assuming because it's so heavy, but if you just keep agitating it, then the powder becomes suspended again in the water, so no problem there. Very easy to use, pretty much like cutting compound really, no different. Just a few more precautions, perhaps just wear some gloves, like I say, wear a respirator when you're mixing it up. Don't breathe in that powder, that's the most important thing really. And perhaps wear some goggles as well, because if it flicks in your eyes, not very nice. I've also got a nice solid backing pad, so this is kind of like a plastic one. There's no giving this at all. It's got a hook and loop backing on it and an M14 threaded nut so they can go straight on the polisher. What I'm using for a pad is this hard felt pad, hook and loop, again Velcro fitting. It's kind of like one of those sort of kinds of felt that would go underneath furniture, maybe a little bit thicker, but it's that kind of material. So I'm going to use this now to polish over there and see if it removes any of those deep scratches. If it doesn't, then I'm going to have to get the sander out and sand them out first and then try and polish them up afterwards. I'm definitely going to have to do this anyway on the driver's side because it's so bad, so I'll just see what it does first as a bit of an experiment. So I've given it another few passes with the cerium oxide. You probably can't see it, I appreciate that, but there still is a very faint line again. It's certainly improved things. Again, the glass that's good remains crystal clear. No issues there whatsoever, but I do have a couple of little scratches just where the deep scratches still are. It's going to take a lot of passes to get rid of that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sand the scratches out and then polish it back up again afterwards. All finished up now. I'll give you an overview of what I've done in good detail now, rather than going through each part individually. So yeah, I could probably go on for another day and improve things, but we're certainly into the realms of diminishing returns now, most definitely. So what I did is I sanded a portion of the screen. On the passenger side, I used a 320 pad to start with, so 320 grit disc, didn't touch it. What it did is just blunted it off immediately. I could get some cutting action if I used it on a grinder, and that's what I seem to use to get it started. The other thing I did is I wet sanded, so I just used water with the 320. That seemed to work quite well. Then I kind of went up the grades that I had anyway. And then I had a horrendous job polishing it back up because of course I've got to polish up all those sanding marks, and the result is it probably took me as much time to sand the sanded down side as it did the other side. Now the upshot is really what I wanted to do, of course, was sand those wiper blade marks and scratches out so that when you buffed it back up again you didn't have a groove in the glass. What it's resulted in is a slightly furrowed appearance to the very surface of the glass, which I don't really like, but you have got to look at it quite close to see this. I have seen the manufacturer of sanding products, sanders and dry goods sanding products, all the rest of it. I watched the demonstration video that they did as well on dry sanding because I thought this might be an option. Of course, you've then got to invest hundreds of pounds in the sanders and the sanding goods before you can start repairing stuff, so it would be a vast investment. I've never had to polish windscreens before, so I don't really feel that this was the way down for me anyway, not the road I wanted to go down. I just wanted to use what I had. Obviously I bought the glass polish and the pad and stuff, and that was good enough for me really. I watched the demonstration of theirs, and indeed theirs also looked very furrowed, the surface of the glass, when they'd finished on the video. So I kind of would have been no further forward really. So what I ended up doing is I marked out the scratch. This is what I found personally myself. speaking of somebody that's unqualified. So what I did is I found the best method for me was to mark out the scratch with a marker pen from the inside. So I got my Sharpie and I marked out where it was, so I couldn't lose a scratch, because of course once you start polishing you can't see where you're going then, and you end up sort of polishing over areas where there aren't any scratches. So this is what I did. I marked it out and I just went over and over and over the scratch, and this kind of has given me the sort of best result, I feel. Of course you can still see a shiny channel in the glass where the scratch was, because the wiper was indeed, you know, eroding away at the glass, so there's no getting away from that. But I would prefer a slight channel defect in the surface of the glass rather than it looking like it's kind of furrowed, if you know what I'm trying to say. The scratches from the, so what I refer to as ring scratches, or where somebody, I don't know, maybe would have used some sort of metal scraper to get ice off perhaps, or something. Now I appreciate it's really hard to see. On my screen I can't see anything, but I can see it with the naked eye. And what it's done with those is it's kind of rounded off the edges of the scratch, and it kind of looks like a watermark under close observation. Again, I mean, all of this is under close observation, you can only see the defects, so I'm pretty happy with that. Like I said, I bought another screen already and that one was no better than this, in fact slightly worse. You've got to draw the line at some stage. We are talking about a 60-year-old vehicle here, and parts and quality parts availability is extremely slim. I've bought many second-hand parts now that I've kind of thrown away once they've arrived, because they've just been absolutely no good at all and made stuff from scratch. Time scale, which people are obviously going to be interested in, I would have said, I don't know, around about 6 hours. The problem is I did it over 2 days, so it was the latter half of one day and the beginning of another day, and that's kind of how long it's taken me to do this. So this is as long as I want to spend on this, really, because I don't think I'm going to get it any better. The cerium oxide glass polish that I bought came in a 200-gram bag, and that's been just about enough to do this screen. It says that you can do 6 screens with this, but what I basically think they mean is if you've got one wiper blade mark on a screen, then it's going to do 6 of these screens with one mark on it. Of course my screen was absolutely littered with them. A little bit more detail on the polishing. I actually found the best speeds were around 800 RPM. Got up to 1000 and I felt like the polishing was getting better, so the efficiency was improving, but I was wearing the polish and so was the walls. So I found that 800 RPM sort of worked about best. The other thing as well, as soon as you raise the speed, it does very quickly dry out the polish as well, because of the heat that you're generating from the friction. I also found that it helped to have the pad tipped up at quite a severe angle, and this also increased the polishing efficiency. If you're just going to hold the pad dead flat on the glass, then you're going to be a long time trying to polish any marks out. I also swapped polishers as well, because my paint polisher is quite a lightweight one and it's not a particularly powerful one. Great for polishing paint, but you need something a little bit more heavy duty for glass, really. I was recently given a polisher off a friend of mine, a variable speed Sealy one, and it looked very much like my old paint polisher that I used to use, my old twin speed Sealy, but it had variable speed, which meant that was great. I could turn the speed right down. The polisher had tons of weight to it, so I could literally just hold the polisher on the glass, tipped at an angle. I didn't have to bear down on the polisher at all, and that gave me a very good effect. I kind of get the feeling that if I just carried on using my paint polisher, I may have burnt the thing out, because it was getting quite hot, and I got a feeling it was going to give up the ghost at some stage. One Bedford windscreen, polished and fitted. There will be a final part 20, coming up on this van later on this year. So thanks very much for watching. Of course the main purpose of this video was just to see really if paint polishing products could be used to polish out marks in a windscreen. So just to clarify, it does work, but only to a degree. the effectiveness loses its effectiveness when the mark is deeper. So possibly a very, very slight sort of dulling of something. I think you could possibly remove it using the cutting compound and polish it up, and it does seem to polish it up crystal clear as well. No haziness or anything like that left behind. Is there anything else I've left?